All right, this election alert means we are getting to our first big poll closing in about 7 seconds at the top of the hour. We've got 6 states closing, and here are our first projections of the results in these states. Starting with Georgia. In the great state of Georgia, the presidential race in Georgia at this hour, NBC News projects it is too early to call, although we do expect we'll get a lot of Georgia vote very quickly. Moving on to Kentucky, where we had some polls close an hour ago, but now the state of Kentucky is closed. There, NBC News projects that Donald Trump has won the presidential election in Kentucky. Moving to the Northeast, to Vermont, NBC News projects that Kamala Harris has won the presidential race in the great state of Vermont. Moving now to Virginia. NBC News projects that in the state of Virginia, the presidential race is too early to call. Moving now to South Carolina. South Carolina polls are closed, and NBC News projects that it is too early to call. And finally, our last poll closing of this hour is in Indiana. We had Indiana, some polls closed an hour ago. Now the state of Indiana has closed. NBC News projects that in Indiana, the race is too early to call. In Indiana, in the presidential race in Indiana, NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won in the state of Indiana. We've got an additional Indiana call in the Senate race. The Indiana Senate race, NBC News now projects that Republican Jim Banks has won that race. Again, early calls just after poll closings in Indiana. There is an additional race in Indiana that we are watching that's got nationwide eyes on it, which, again, is a remarkable thing given Republican prospects broadly in Indiana. But that governor's race in Indiana has been one to watch, and so we'll keep eyes there. As we hit 7:30 Eastern time, NBC News can project that in the North Carolina presidential race, no surprise here, it is too early to call. North Carolina, not the only state that's closing at 7:30. NBC News can also project in the West Virginia presidential contest. In West Virginia, Donald Trump is the winner. West Virginia's presidential race, NBC News projecting that right now for Donald Trump. And in Ohio, NBC News is projecting that in the presidential race, it is too early to call between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Looking at the road to 270, we are still just barely on our way. 23 electoral votes thus far for Donald Trump, with the West Virginia, Indiana, and Kentucky races called for him, and Vermont thus far called for Kamala Harris, 23-3 on the electoral votes. Let's look at Senate and governor's races. Let's go back to Georgia, to the Georgia battleground, the presidential race. Still too early to call. You see, we've got about 8% in, but Steve Kornacki's been watching the vote come in Georgia, and we are expecting to see quite a bit of vote come in Georgia within this first hour after poll closings. Now, let's go to some Senate and governor's races. This is the Senate race, very closely watched Senate race in the great state of Ohio, where incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is facing Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. NBC News projects that this is too early to call at this hour. And in West Virginia, we have a projection in the Senate race there. Now, this is the Senate seat that was held by former Democrat, now independent Joe Manchin. This is not a surprise. The Republicans have picked up the Senate seat in West Virginia. NBC News projecting that Republican Senate candidate Jim Justice will take that Senate seat in West Virginia, which, of course, is a Republican pickup. That's the one sort of lockdown, absolute guaranteed Republican pickup in the Senate this year. This is the Senate balance at this hour, 29 Democrats and 40 Republicans. With that seat in West Virginia, Republicans have one Senate pickup. At 8 p.m. Eastern, NBC News can project in the battleground state of Pennsylvania in the presidential race, it is too early to call. In the state of Florida, NBC News can project that there is a winner. NBC News projects at poll closing in the state of Florida that Donald Trump has won the state of Florida. In the state of Massachusetts, NBC News projects a winner, projects that Kamala Harris has won the state of Massachusetts. In the state of Tennessee, NBC projects a winner. projecting Donald Trump to be the winner in Tennessee. In Maryland, NBC News projects that there is a winner in the presidential race, and it is Vice President Kamala Harris. In the state of Missouri, NBC projects a winner, Donald Trump, projected to win the presidential race in the state of Missouri. In the state of Alabama, NBC News projects the winner of the presidential race is Donald Trump. In the state of Oklahoma, NBC News projects that the winner of the presidential race is Donald Trump. In the District of Columbia, which for some reason isn't a state, NBC News projects we have a winner. The winner is Vice President Kamala Harris. In the state of Illinois, NBC News projects that it is too early to call. To the Northeast, in the state of New Jersey, it is too early to call in the presidential race. In the state of Connecticut, NBC News projects it is too early to call. In the state of Rhode Island, NBC News projects it is too early to call. Down back to the deep south, in the state of Mississippi, NBC News projects it is too early to call. Back up again to the far northeast, NBC News projects that in the state of Maine, it is too early to call. In the always interesting state of New Hampshire, NBC News projects at this hour it is too early to call. And finally, in the home state of President Joe Biden in Delaware, NBC News projects at this hour it is too early to call. Just for one moment, we have a call in a presidential race in the state of South Carolina. NBC News now projects that Donald Trump is the winner of the presidential contest in South Carolina. Back to you, Steve.
Yep.
Here at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, polls closed in the great state of Arkansas, and at poll closing, NBC News can project that the winner of the presidential contest in Arkansas will be Donald Trump. We have another projection. NBC News has just made a projection in the presidential race in Delaware. There's a winner in the presidential race in Delaware. The winner is Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris. And let's look at some calls. We've got a lot of states closing. NBC News can project at this hour in the Michigan presidential race that it is too early to call. In the just as crucial swing state of Wisconsin, NBC News can project in the presidential race that it is too early to call. In the equally crucial swing state of Arizona, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too close to call. In the great state of Texas, NBC News projects that there is a winner, that Donald Trump has won in the great state of Texas. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential race in North Dakota. The winner is Donald Trump. NBC News also projects a winner in the presidential race in South Dakota. The winner is Donald Trump. NBC News also projects a winner in the Wyoming presidential race. The winner is Donald Trump. In the great state of New York, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. In the great and now very closely watched state of Iowa, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. NBC News projects also that the presidential race in Minnesota is too early to call. NBC News projects that the presidential race in Nebraska is too early to call. NBC News projects that the presidential race in Colorado is too early to call. The projection in Louisiana is that it is too early to call in the presidential race. The projection for the Kansas presidential race is that it is too early to call. And back to the Southwest, in New Mexico, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. The NBC News projection in the state of Rhode Island is that there is a winner in the Rhode Island presidential contest. Kamala Harris is projected to win the presidential race in Rhode Island. NBC News can also project in Mississippi that the winner of the presidential contest is Donald Trump. NBC News can also project in Louisiana that the winner of the presidential contest is Donald Trump. A couple of other interesting updates for you. Back to Delaware. This is a historic outcome in a House race. So this is the Delaware House seat, an at-large House seat. This is an open seat because the incumbent was Lisa Blunt Rochester, who just won a U.S. Senate seat in Delaware tonight. When she left that seat and opened it up, the Democrat running for it is Sarah McBride. The Republican running for it is John Whalen. NBC News can project that Sarah McBride has won that seat. And I mentioned that this is a historic win because Sarah McBride will be the first openly transgender member of Congress. And she she has just won this seat tonight in Delaware. Congratulations to her. We do have a call to make. NBC News can now project that the presidential race in New York has a winner. Kamala Harris has won the presidential race in the great state of New York. NBC News has made a projection in the presidential race in the great state of Illinois. Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris has won the presidential contest in Illinois. NBC News has projected a winner in the presidential race in the great state of Ohio, home state of vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is projected to be the winner in the state of Ohio. Again, no surprise there. Ohio used to be like the prototypical swing state, just like Florida. Neither of them considered to be a swing state anymore. In the presidential race in Kansas, NBC News can now project that the winner of the presidential race in Kansas is Donald Trump. NBC News projecting in the presidential race in the great state, the swing state of Nevada, it is too early to call. NBC News projecting a winner in the presidential race in Utah. Donald Trump projected to win the presidential race in Utah. NBC News also projecting a winner in the presidential race in Montana. So Nevada, too early to call. Trump win in Utah. Trump win in Montana. And NBC News can project in the presidential race in Colorado that there is a winner in Colorado, that Kamala Harris has won the state of Colorado. NBC News now projects there's a winner in the presidential contest in Iowa. Donald Trump is projected to have won the presidential contest in the state of Iowa. NBC News is making a projection in the presidential race in Nebraska. Now, as you know, in Nebraska, the electoral votes are allotted by congressional district, so I need to be specific here. NBC News is projecting that Donald Trump will win overall the state of Nebraska in the presidential contest, but at this point, NBC News is only comfortable attributing 3 of the 5 electoral votes in Nebraska to Donald Trump. Again, they will go congressional district by congressional district. There is still a chance here that although Trump is winning the state, that Harris may get an electoral vote or 2 out of the state. So we will watch 3 of the 5 electoral votes in Nebraska projected to go to Donald Trump. In terms of our projections here, NBC News can project a winner in the presidential race in California. Kamala Harris, California native, is projected to be the winner of the presidential race in California. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential race in Idaho. Republican Donald Trump projected to be the winner of the presidential race in Idaho. NBC News can project a winner in the presidential race in the state of Oregon. Vice President Kamala Harris has won in the state of Oregon, per NBC News' projection. We've got a couple of projections from NBC News. In the presidential race in Connecticut, NBC News can project that the winner of that presidential race will be Vice President Kamala Harris. NBC News can also project that we have a winner in the presidential contest in Washington state. The winner there, also Kamala Harris. NBC News can also make a projection in the Senate race in Washington state. In that Senate race, we've got an incumbent Democratic Senator, Maria Cantwell. She will be returning to the United States Senate. NBC News can project at this hour in the presidential race in the state of Virginia that there is a winner in Virginia. Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris has won the presidential contest in the state of Virginia. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential contest in North Carolina. NBC News projects that the winner in the presidential race in the state of North Carolina is Donald Trump. This is our first projection of a result in any of the 7 big swing states. The first swing state to be projected by NBC News tonight is North Carolina, going to Donald Trump. I understand we also have a change in the characterization of the presidential race in Minnesota. In Minnesota, this had previously been characterized as too early to call. Minnesota now characterized by NBC News as too close to call. Looking at the overall map, the road to 270. Right now, Donald Trump stands at 230 electoral votes. Kamala Harris stands at 185. Again, NBC News can project that in the presidential race in Hawaii, there is a projected winner. Kamala Harris projected to be the winner in the presidential race in the state of Hawaii. Right? Yes, there it is. For the second time this evening, NBC News is able to make a projection in a battleground state. NBC News now projects that in the battleground state of Georgia in the presidential race, Donald Trump has prevailed in the presidential race in Georgia. So again, of our swing states, we've got two called thus far in Georgia and in North Carolina per NBC News. That puts the electoral map at Donald Trump with 246 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris at 189 electoral votes. Again, both candidates aiming at 270. NBC News can project that in the presidential race in New Mexico, there is a winner, and the winner is Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. When the Trump campaign was getting very, very, very cocky about how they were going to do tonight, they started talking about expanding the map, expanding to Virginia, which they lost tonight to Kamala Harris. They talked about expanding the map to New Mexico, where they sent Donald Trump in the closing days. Now NBC News projects they have lost New Mexico to Kamala Harris as well. NBC News has a projection to make in the presidential contest in the swing state of Pennsylvania. NBC News now projects that that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. Now, I believe that means that we are at a 266 electoral vote count for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at 194 electoral votes. So to be clear here, this is the third of the 7 major swing states that have been called. But Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, as those 3 states, presents an almost unless there's it presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. NBC News can make a projection for the presidential race in the great state of Minnesota. NBC News projects that Minnesota has been won by Vice President Kamala Harris. So Donald Trump, at this hour, Donald Trump has 266 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 204 electoral votes. The speech that Donald Trump just gave was essentially a victory speech. At this point, NBC News has not projected a winner in this race. NBC News does have a projection to make in one additional presidential race, this time in the state of New Jersey. NBC News projects that the winner of the presidential race in New Jersey is Democratic candidate and Vice President Kamala Harris. New Jersey, believe it or not, was one of the states that the Trump campaign was sort of bragging on. Were they able to expand the map? They said that New Jersey was one of those states they'd be able to win. They said the same thing about Virginia. They said the same thing about Minnesota. They have not been able to expand the map, but they have won important swing states already that have put them on the precipice. 266 electoral votes right now for Trump, 218 for Kamala Harris.
Breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president. And for so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome and incited a violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon. During this campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before, and wield that power to go after his political enemies. This is a man who's also bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping away women's bodily autonomy. He's promised to conduct mass deportations to crack down on the rights of millions of Americans. Donald Trump is an anti-democratic force, but he's just been elected democratically in our country. And here's what might be the hardest part to hear, but we have to talk about and we have to say, and it is a hard part to digest for all of us. But we have to be honest about what we saw in this election. Donald Trump was elected by expanding his support over a number of key groups that we've been digging into this night, all night tonight, as we anticipated where this was headed. And I know we're going to dig into it throughout the course of the day today. And there will be a lot of time spent on how and why he won and what this will mean for the country over the next 4 years and beyond. But in this moment, it's also important to remember that our democracy is not built around one person or one job. And I have every confidence that pro-democracy forces in this country will continue to stand up and make their voices heard.
We have one more state to call. Donald Trump adding to his electoral count. NBC now projects he is the winner of Michigan and its 15 electoral votes, state that Joe Biden won in 2020 by nearly 3 points. Now Donald Trump is the winner there. You see it, almost 50% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.3, with 99% of the votes now in.
Another projection to make. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump is the winner in Alaska, picking up 3 more electoral votes. Again, he already met the threshold needed to become president-elect, but it does give him 3 more electoral votes in terms of the Electoral College. Donald Trump winning Alaska. Now he has 295 electoral votes, with a couple of states, as you can see there, Nevada and Arizona, not called yet for the presidency.